Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Back in Britain Live, our 8th event with Stephen Loftus from Brompton Bicycle. So just before we get started and I hand you over to Stephen, I just wanted to let you know a little bit more about him and what his presentation will focus on today. So today's event is one lots of people have been waiting for. If you haven't already, make sure you head over to backinbritain.com and hunt for the stand with the golden banner and be in with the chance to win a bottle of wine or a Brompton bike worth £750. I'm sure Stephen will talk more about these bikes today. You can find out more via our Made in the Midlands and Made in Yorkshire socials, including LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. So Stephen Loftus is the CCO at Brompton Bikes, Chief Commercial Officer. Sponsors of the Back in Britain Live 2020 event, Brompton Bicycle have been described as producing the mother of all folding bikes by The Telegraph. Stephen has extensive knowledge in FMCG and startup business experience. His presentation today will be centred around the idea, which has been echoed by the UK government in recent weeks, about the importance of using fewer cars and more bikes. So the question is this the new golden age for cycling? So I won't keep you any longer and I'll pass you straight over to Stephen. So thank you very much for being part of Back in Britain Live today, and we hope you enjoy the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Yasmin. Thank you everyone for joining. It's great to be telling you a bit about Brompton and obviously our view on the big question, is this the new golden age of cycling? I think you might have an idea of what our answer could be on that question. I've been at Brompton for nearly 6 years now. It's been an incredible journey. Just in that short period of time, the business has grown from around 220 employees to nearly 500 today. We've moved factory once from Kew Bridge in London to Greenford, where I'm sitting now in one of our meeting rooms. You can see our lovely bikes behind me. And it's been quite a transformational period. We're just kind of awakening to the fact that if we've seen change and excitement over the last 6 years, I think the next 6 years are going to be even more of a roller coaster and exciting ride ahead. Before I go into what has happened in our world post the world of Zoom and before that period, what was going on at Brompton, I'm just going to share a bit of a view of the world pre-COVID, and then we'll go into how we responded, what we think is going to happen as best as we can in the future. So, I mean, really, the world today, and has been in the last 30 years, the kind of trend towards migration to cities around the world has just intensified in the last 30 years, and that is having a huge impact on both our worlds in the UK and cities here, but also around the rest of the world. And you can see, now nearly 40 mega cities around the world of population of over 10 million. And I did geography at university a long time ago, and there was definitely, Mexico City might have been pushing there. There wasn't the number of cities that we've got today. And there's been a huge amount of positive, with that. And obviously we've seen a significant economic growth and wealth growth across the world. Technology breakthroughs have come, I'm sure, a big part to the development of cities and megacities, just as an example. Cultural diversity that comes from living and working in cities, and hopefully, I know as an optimist think that has been a period where there's been a better understanding of cultures around the world, and an incredible energy that comes from the growth of cities and inspiring kind of progress and entrepreneurialism. There's been challenges though, and I think we'd all appreciate that if you live or want to move in a city. Congestion, pollution, lack of physical exercise. You think of all the sporting grounds in the UK, that used to exist for schools that don't exist today, and mental health. And I'm just going to touch on a few of those areas and make the link back into the bigger question. Congestion, is something which we don't feel as we're sitting in a city, myself in London at the moment. But you know, you know, it's not been long since, you know, we were living in this world, and one of the key things is the structure of the city, and the planning of the city has been built around the car. And I think in the 1950s it started, and it's continued to accelerate. And the challenge of that is, you know, the impact that has had on our space and our ability to move across the city. Some cities have been brave and pushed against that trend, particularly in Netherlands and Denmark. But really, from a practical sense, the journey times in cities, as population has grown, has got slower and slower. In London, you know, in every city, you can just imagine, I've been stuck in a taxi in Bangkok a couple of times with work, and it is, you know, horrific compared to even London. But in London in 2016, there was a study that was done by the Sunday Times that showed that it was slower to get across London in a car than a horse and cart. And then drivers were spending, on average, 12 working days sitting in traffic. It was just, you know, it kind of raises the question, is there a better way of structuring the way we move across cities? And it's not just about the time, it's also about the space, how much space is given up as a result of the infrastructure in place, but also the cars. And again, there's, you know, there's been plenty of studies about this, but at the moment, you know, one of the kind of most telling ones was that 95% of cars are on average parked in a city. And just think of the space that's taking up and what that could unlock if we change the way we move in cities and think beyond just being dominated by the car in terms of our planning. The impact of that had already started. You know, the Clean Air campaign across the cities around the world, particularly in the UK, and the scandal, however you want to call it, in terms of the diesel was hitting our headlines. So that was already very much in our consciousness, and thinking about how, you know, as a rallying call, we can find ways of having cleaner air for the people that live in cities, and particularly, you know, the children and the future generations. It's not, though, just about the environment and the link to potentially the use of the car. There's also, you know, the challenge on public transport. Public transport today, as we're sitting here, might not have the challenges, but before, most cities in the world, public transport is at bursting point, and was struggling to cope with the movement of people across the city. Packed, unreliable, increasingly, you know, an experience that you can't believe that you're actually paying for. And often, as with the car, in most journey times in cities are under 5 miles. Not always necessary. Sometimes, obviously, you know, it is necessary, but there are many opportunities to shift people into active travel, as an example, in a way which would really kind of make a difference to people's lives and the environment that we're living in and working in cities. Now, the health aspect, apologies for the, if you like, a bit dramatic image, but I think pre-COVID, you know, obviously this was already a crisis that was affecting our own personal lives and society in general. And we're unfortunately a bit of a leader in the problem in Europe. We are the second fattest city behind Malta, country behind Malta, and pretty on par with the States. And this is, you know, creating a healthcare time bomb in terms of the impact it's going to have, not just on the individual, but on the society that we live in, and how can we afford to manage it, and the knock-on effect of diabetes and all other illnesses as a result of it. And in cities where most people are living and a lot are working, the way we move in cities has really contributed to that problem, and also missed the opportunity around active travel. Some, you know, places like Denmark and Netherlands have up to 40% of journeys in cities being done on a bicycle, as an example. And we're at best at 4% and often at 2%. And before COVID, there was a bit of a campaign that we obviously would be supporting, but it was a bit of a sideshow, and it wasn't taken that seriously. Time has changed, and we see a big opportunity now, but it's a problem which isn't just about physical health, it's also about mental health. And this is especially for people, excuse me, I'll go back a slide, who live in cities, and definitely those also that work in cities. And it's something that at Brompton we particularly are passionate about, and believe that we can play, and other cycle businesses can play a key role to addressing that challenge. With a lack of space, lack of time, lack of exercise, many people are struggling in cities, and mental illness is a growing problem. And it's not a surprise, the way people particularly would move and have moved to kind of get to work is one of the horrors of the kind of the experience, or the negative sides of living in a city, and it isn't necessary. As I said, most journeys are 5 miles and even less than 5 miles. So that is very achievable, on a bike. Many journeys are achievable walking across the city. I myself lived in London, and I don't now, but I lived in London for 15 years, and it was when I realised how close everything was and got on 2 wheels when I really kind of started to fall in love with the city. So we've kind of, this was last September, there was a car-free day, and we started to up our communication and be a bit bolder in terms of how we could encourage more people to make the shift in terms of how they move in the city to benefit the environment and improve people's way they live there, and move in cities in a way which makes them happier and more fulfilled, but also give a vision of what could happen if we were more thoughtful in our use of space. And that bottom right slide, part of the slide, shows you, what would happen if some of those parked cars were no longer on those streets, and how much space could be open to football pitches, open space, cultural spots that we would all enjoy and love in a city. The other point that was already happening pre-COVID, but maybe not at the same level in the UK, was the development of e-bikes. And it's been a revolution. Across Europe now, you have markets such as Germany and Netherlands where more electric bikes are sold than standard bikes. It's opening up the opportunity for cycling for that 2 mile, 5 mile, 8 mile journey in a way which wasn't as accessible to as many people. So, we're finding from Europe that people are cycling further and longer. The average journey on an e-bike in Germany, for an e-bike in Germany is now 9 kilometers. So, a bicycle is definitely not about the last mile solution. And when you start thinking of 9 kilometers and drop that pin in a city, just think how that could transform the way people consider cycling as a solution. And we obviously want to be a big part of that with our electric Brompton that came out 2 years ago. So that's the context for the world pre-COVID. So obviously, like everyone, we were reeling at first in terms of the impact that COVID could have, not least in terms of how we could keep manufacturing in our supply base. I mean, we are, and we keep reminding and telling ourselves, we are exceptionally lucky to be in an industry that is in a position that will, we hope, benefit from some of the consequences of this kind of terrible crisis. And we take that responsibility very seriously in terms of we've got to make sure that we add make a real positive difference and help, hopefully, as much as we can through this period in time, but also, think of the opportunity for making a positive impact in the way people live their lives, particularly in cities in the future. Public transport, was, immediately, obviously, a huge issue in COVID, picked up by all the governments. around the world and the cities around the world. And that's no surprise when you consider how many people were and how many journeys were being done in public transport, and the challenge for moving, particularly those key workers in those first few months in particular across the city. We had kind of the underground in London at 20% capacity, and understandably, even with the trains that are running, you know, the appetite to get on those trains was pretty low. So that triggered pretty quickly a monumental shift, if you like, in terms of attitude towards active travel in cities, driven by this immediate need. And Paris led the way, 650 kilometers of cycle lanes being put in, but it's gone around the world, including, you know, across our cities in the UK, Birmingham, with Andy Street, you know, the mayor, you know, Andy Burnham in Manchester, London, you know, our PM, everyone pushing for this change and this practical solution in the short term, but hopefully this long-term transformational opportunity for cities. And, you know, cities may never look the same again. I think that that is the case. That we're collectively an optimistic bunch at Brompton. You know, we want cities to be better and more thriving than ever in the future, and we think cycling can play that role. So, you know, we definitely believe that, you know, the city working and, you know, living and having fun, you know, is going to, you know, remain, and we want to make sure that, you know, we can help you know, people to continue moving in cities in a way which is transformational, and it will make it an even more enjoyable place to live and work. You know, that out of these, oops, sorry, my slides are going a bit slower than I expected. So out of the crisis, you know, undoubtedly comes opportunities. I'm sure personally we all think that in terms of the way we work and our balance between home and our families and friends. So, you know, we recognize that, and I think the scale of this challenge, you know, creates a global opportunity. And just taking an example from what happened in the Netherlands in the 1970s, out of the OPEC crisis, turbo boosted a campaign that was already building. But we have to kind of remember, when we talk about you know, Netherlands as the land of the bicycle, that wasn't the case, you know, pre the 1970s. You know, there was a lot of conflict. There was a campaign to, you know, change the way people live in cities and make the car maybe less dominant, or definitely less dominant. But there was a lot of fighting and challenge around that. But I think apart from, you know, from the crisis of the OPEC oil crisis stimulating the change, it was also looking at things through the eyes of the children and the future generations. And on the right, you can see a documentary that was done in Amsterdam, and it was a famous documentary that was walking through the streets through the eyes of children and then challenging, is that the way we want future generations to live? And you can see the street today and the change that's been delivered. So we really want us all to take this opportunity to inspire a change. You know, we have to work hard with everyone across the industry and drive as much of this story as possible. And the following is a video which has been done by a group which is across industry, and it's trying to tell the story of where we are and the opportunity ahead. So I'm just going to quickly show it to you, and hopefully you enjoy it.
The best thing we can do right now is get back to normal, right? But what if normal isn't normal anymore? What if we're waiting for a future that makes us unhappy? Do you want things how they were, or do you want a new sense of freedom? It's time for us all to make some changes. One change we could make that would make us happier, healthier, and even save us money is riding a bike. With 2/3 2/3 of all journeys under 5 miles. The time for change is now. For short journeys, bike is best. For your health, bike is best. For your well-being, bike is best. Let's not go back to the old normal. Let's do something better together for everyone. The best.
So we've got a lot of hearts and minds to get on the journey that we believe is ahead of us in terms of the opportunity of transforming the way people move in cities, and think of the bicycle as one of the real solutions to that. It's really encouraging that the Bike is Best campaign has done research to highlight that actually the support for cycling and putting infrastructure in is much higher, definitely much higher than it was pre-COVID. So nearly 7 people for every one against putting this infrastructure in. But we can't be complacent. That we have to keep pushing on and making sure that we take this opportunity and change the way people move in cities. So what's happened at Brompton? I mean, clearly initially, we had a huge challenge in terms of how to adapt to the new world, but quickly the demand linked to this infrastructure investment started to take off, and it's plus 200%. That was pretty exciting, but also pretty challenging. I mean, this is a bit of a snapshot of our business today, but as it was, we 75% of our business is exported, and 1,500 retailers around the world. And our challenge was, how do we continue to manufacture and provide, this opportunity for people to get on bikes while dealing with the incredible challenges of setting up the manufacturing or keeping the manufacturing going during this period of time. I'm going to just quickly give you a bit of insight into our customer base, and that will kind of give you an indication of where the opportunity lies and the benefits that people get from riding a Brompton bicycle. We have around 500,000 owners around the world. They're pretty passionate and incredible advocates of the Brompton brand. I'm just going to show you a quick clip here, which gives you a flavour of why people love Brompton, probably more importantly, why they love the effect it's had on their lives and the effect it has on their health. I'm going to quickly show you now.
It's a really fun, nimble bike to ride. It makes it easier to get around. Like, I used to catch a lot more Ubers.
People do notice it right away, especially Michael. I like the most when I'm dressed in a three-piece suit.
Siento una gran sensación de libertad montando mi bike.
Being able to diversify transport options, so a lot more flexibility and a lot more independence.
Whenever I ride my Brompton, it's usually because I want that sense of freedom. I feel like I can just keep pedaling and just keep going wherever I want.
We have no friends, and I know him because I have Brompton, please, and he's the most guy in Indonesia.
Montar me sentir libre, más vital y más saludable.
I feel very happy, very happy. Thanks.
So, yeah, that gives you a flavour of the effect Brompton and cycling can have on people's lives. Our challenge, obviously, was to keep the show going initially, and we had to work very, very hard with a lot of support from the Bicycle Association to ensure that bicycle and Brompton manufacturing remained an essential service, so we could keep the workers moving, and particularly those, as I mentioned earlier, getting around on public transport. So, we were very fortunate that we got that status, and our suppliers and our staff were passionate about what impact we can make immediately to the crisis. So we kept everything going. Our orders initially dropped because a lot of our stores around the world, third-party stores, closed. Our capacity dropped by 30% as we had to furlough those staff that needed to be protected. But our first step, was to keep the show going, but also was how can we get bikes into the hands of those that most need it. So we started initially through our bike car business to share some bikes with some staff at St Bart's Hospital, and from that started to snowball a big campaign on how we can get more and more bikes into NHS staff hands. And I ended up with a campaign where we co-funded a number of, 900 bikes that are now available and on loan into staff across the NHS hospitals. That also was important for us to kind of drive the commitment to really kind of start to step up the level of our production as quickly as possible. We had to adapt quickly in terms of the way the production line was run. We had to obviously have more space on each of the different lines. We had to keep social distancing across the office and help give people guidance on how to be safe and work in a safe environment. Our commercial staff, most of them were working from home, but pretty, after a couple of months, we started to come in a few days a week, whilst the manufacturing obviously kept running throughout that whole period. From a customer's perspective, we also had the challenge that a lot of people were struggling with the idea. They wanted a bike, but they were struggling with either getting to a store because they were closed, or on limited hours, or they just were not comfortable going into a store because of the risk. So we had to very quickly on a sixpence start to launch a direct-to-home service and encourage our retailer network to do that, so people could get their bikes and have the opportunity of getting on a Brompton, whether it was to get to work or to get around in their local area or local town. Our challenge on doing that is how do we maintain the experience that they might get in a store. We had to develop a video supports service whereby you get as best as you can, the guidance on what is the right bike to get and how to look after your bike and how to get support post purchase. So we've had to adapt very quickly in terms of how we engage with our customers and work with our retailer network in a way which is been a challenge, but also opened up many opportunities both for us and our retailers to reach more customers. From a marketing perspective, it was very clear that we were recruiting people who were new to cycling and definitely new to Brompton. So we had to kind of be a bit bold in terms of trying to open the eyes to the fact that you can actually kind of get around and live your life, but in a way, and avoid maybe some of the forms of transport that you had previously, and protect particularly public transport for those that can't necessarily get on a bike. So we worked hard to try and get that message out there to ensure that we are protecting that limited capacity on those public transport networks, but also inspire people to get on a bike. Today, our challenge is how do we get our production capacity up. The team have done an incredible job. Our manufacturing team, we're now at levels which are just ahead of our pre-COVID, and we've got plans to grow that. But our demand, as you can see from these pictures, has way outstripped supply. So, our challenge is how to increase that capacity while maintaining the quality of our bike. And actually, all of us who ride the bike know that Brompton is great, and that's why we've got such an incredible customer base. But it can get better, a lot better. So our challenge is not just to increase the capacity at our factory, but to improve the quality of our bike as we do that. From a total business perspective, it just means we've had to move a lot faster and have to think bigger in terms of our ambition. We thought we were targeting 100,000 bikes a year in 5 years. That's now going to be in 2 years. we need to transform our production. We need to transform the way we engage with our customers. So, as I said earlier on, we're very, very lucky as an industry, and as a company. But our challenge now is to take the most of that opportunity and make a difference to people and their lives, particularly in cities. And it's not just about Brompton, and our business. It's about cycling in general. And actually, pre-COVID, there was quite a bit of work done by the Bicycle Association looking at the opportunity for a bike valley in the UK. Bike Valley in Portugal has been incredibly successful, and it's kind of a why not? And particularly in the post-Brexit world, that opportunity is just going to get greater and greater, and be a home for micro-mobility, cycling, and tech. And if we can take a lead in that and hopefully trigger others to join, we think there's no reason why Britain can once again be one of the centres of bicycle manufacturing. I think in 1900 Birmingham was obviously had Birmingham and Coventry, but and Birmingham, I think in 1900 was the biggest manufacturer of the bicycle in the world. So who knows, that might happen in the future. Midlands has got an incredible pedigree. Obviously, you've got across Nottingham, Coventry, Birmingham, an incredible legacy of bike manufacture. Who knows? Maybe once again, the Midlands can be part of the new golden age of cycling. I'd be delighted if that was the case. Back to that question. Is this the golden age of cycling? Not yet. We're determined to make sure that it is. I think it's a tipping point. We're going to be throwing the kitchen sink at that tipping point and hoping to make it happen. But we're going to need a lot of support. We're going to have to try and inspire people on the journey to transform the way they move in cities, and we're going to need as much help as possible. So that's the end of my presentation. Sorry, my slides were going back and forwards a couple of times. Questions?
Thank you for that, Stephen. We've had a massive influx of questions, so a lot to get through. So we have until 1:45, so 12:45, so we'll get through as many as possible. There was a couple of glitches with that last video, Stephen, so anybody who would like that video, I will send it, the link to that via your emails. So thank you again, Stephen, and we'll get straight onto the questions now. So our first question comes from Laurie Campbell, who asks, are you aware of any grants or incentive, in brackets, tax or other schemes, available to start-up electric bike companies in the UK? Does Brompton support / incubate any start-up bike companies?
I'm just trying to think. I don't know the exact details, but there's definitely been a small level of government support for startup e-bike companies and e-bike cargo bikes. I think if you went to the Bicycle Association website, you'd have some information on that. But being blunt, it's been at a very low level and not at the level that we would kind of be wanting if we're really going to be at the centre of the new age of cycling in terms of manufacturing. Obviously, from a customer perspective, there have been a cycle to work scheme, but actually in terms of startups, there hasn't been a significant amount. But I would suggest that you go and have a look at the Bicycle Association website. You might find a bit more information about that. In terms of Brompton, not directly yet. I mean, it's something that we've discussed about could we play more of an active role in terms of supporting incubation of e-bike businesses. We're probably more active in terms of working with our supplier base at the moment and pretty focused on our own bike and making that better and continuing to develop it. But I see in the next few years that we should, and I expect that we should, and hopefully we will, start to play a broader role and support that. I know we play a bit of a role at the universities in terms of having a presence there, but it's definitely an opportunity, but we're not doing it at the moment.
Great, thanks for that, Stephen. So our next question comes from Alona Pitt, but I noticed in the chat earlier, Hugo Russell said, a local bike shop said to me last Friday that they have done 2 years of business in the past 5 months. And you did speak about this briefly in terms of Brompton, but Alona asks, hi Stephen, how are you finding the demand for your products and business in general at the moment comparing to times pre-COVID? And she also says, some of your popular models are out of stock. How quickly will you ramp up production?
I mean, the demand is, as you can see from their website, you know, it's nearly double. I mean, the website is at a higher level, but I'd say the demand is double what it was pre-COVID now. And actually, we don't really have a read. It could even be further than that. So it's a challenge, and we're spending a lot of our time on how to allocate the product that we've got in terms of the number of bikes we can make. And we've also got the complexity of a global business and the wonderful opportunity that that brings. So, you know, UK is 25% of our business, but we've got to also make sure that we're getting the bikes into our stores in Jakarta, in New York, in Shanghai, in Singapore, in Paris. So it's really difficult trying to make the right judgments on that and try and make sure that, you know, we get as many bikes into as many customers' hands as possible. And actually UK in particular, because initially the UK stores a lot of them were closed. I think the UK, our challenge is that we haven't got enough stock going into those markets. We're expecting that to improve into the UK market. We're expecting it to improve over the next couple of months, and we are investing heavily to significantly ramp up our capacity while maintaining the quality. But it's, you know, it's not an easy one to manage. We have the advantage of a bike-car network in the UK, so that means people can at least get on a Brompton and try it, and maybe wait a bit if they haven't got the perfect model. But, you know, it will improve over the next couple of months, but we really need to kind of transform the way, you know, we manage our production to enable that capacity to go up, and that's what we're working the most hard on at the moment.
Great, thanks for that, Stephen. So our next question comes from Ian Woodley, who says, firstly, love this, Stephen, and love my bike. What can the government do to accelerate the take-up of cycling? Surely the infrastructure is crucial.
Infrastructure is at the heart, of it. And you know, I was in a call with one of our biggest retail customers, and they've been talking across the network, the industry, and everyone was saying, well, it's going to be, you know, cycling is going to be undoubtedly booming in the next 24 months or next 18 months, but really beyond that, it's going to be a lot dependent on infrastructure. So getting it so people feel safe on cycling. Chris Boardman put it really well that, you know, you want to be able to make it so a competent 12-year-old can ride across the streets of our cities and feel confident. And we've got a long way to go before we've got that. So, you know, investing in the infrastructure, integrated infrastructure, so everything's joined up, not that you come to a point of a lane and suddenly you hit traffic. So that infrastructure investment is key. And then from a UK perspective, you know, the government to help encourage people to get on e-bikes. You know, we're not really incentivizing in the UK in the way that Europe have. Italy immediately gave a grant of £500 to people that bought an e-bike. We've been pretty slow off the mark on that. E-bikes will open up cycling to so many more people. And from a manufacturing perspective, get us at the heart of innovation in the UK. So invest in the R&D, the universities, support manufacturing, support the supply base in a way that has been a huge amount of support for the car industry, but let's kind of move some of that support. Obviously keep, you know, the car industry is, you know, we're an intermodal product. We link up with the car, but we need some of that investment to come into cycling in the UK.
Yeah, of course, and I definitely agree with that. And it actually falls quite nicely into our next question. So we only have 6 minutes left, so we'll try and get as much of these questions in as possible, guys. But we do have virtual drinks later on at 3 p.m, where you may have the chance to network with Stephen then as well. So our next question is from Sandra Middleton, and she says, I live in a more rural area and would love to cycle the 13 miles to work on an e-bike, but the road between my town and the town I work in is dangerous with lorries and cars. When do you think dedicated bike lanes with curves, as they do in France and in the Netherlands, will be seen in the UK?
I think it's a really good question, and we are quite focused on our vision around the cities, but we mustn't forget, you know, not just the people that are living in those rural areas, but all those that are interacting and trying to get to their local town, and then maybe into the hub of the bigger city. And it is an area that sometimes can get completely forgotten, and particularly an area where public transport was already being forgotten in terms of, at a much lower level than it used to be in the past. I think we just got to keep campaigning for it and put the infrastructure in place. I mean, we have the advantage that you can fold up a Brompton and put it in another form of transport, a car, tram, bus, whatever it might be. But I think it is a bit of a black spot in terms of our thinking, actually, in terms of those lanes, in terms of those hubs, in terms of rural areas. And you see in Netherlands, it's networked up incredibly, and they're on e-bikes for 20, 30K, as well as, not just the 11K you were mentioning. So I think, yeah, it's a good reminder not to forget that.
Definitely. Thanks for that, Stephen. So our next question, it comes from Dean Perry, and he asks, how do you envisage increasing quality of the manufacturing of the bike? Are you looking for digital technology?
Yes, digital technology would be part of it. I mean, the main thing is, we make our bike, we've got to make our bike more efficiently, but we've got to make it better. So we've got to continue to work on the core design of the bike, and then in that, obviously, digital technology will make it, is a big part of that journey already for us. And then in terms of the manufacturing process, yes, I think all from all levels of moving parts around the building to managing the quality standards at the different elements of the production process. We're already doing a bit, but we're going to do a lot more, and that's going to be one of the enabling factors for us to kind of leap forward in terms of our capacity and hopefully the quality at the same time. Already, output of COVID has been our attention to detail, particularly because we've had to kind of get more bikes out to direct to customers, has had to go up through the manufacturing process. So, digital will be just one of the areas that will help support that development.
Yeah, most definitely. And I thought this was a really great question from Chris Richardson. So I'd just like to ask this next, and then maybe another one as well. So Chris says, hi Stephen, Chris here from QM Systems. I know the Brompton bikes are assembled in the UK, but are the raw materials such as the brakes, gear sets, crank seats, etc. UK manufactured? I'm keen to know if they are not, is this now a consideration given what COVID-19 has highlighted with supply chain issues?
We've got quite a balance in terms of all the different parts that come into a Brompton bicycle, and I apologies, I might not get this exactly right, and if my chief operations officer was listening, he'd probably tell me off. But roughly we have around, I think, a third coming in from Asia, maybe a bit more, a third from Europe and the US, and the remainder in from the UK. So there's definitely an opportunity to change that, and actually it'd be incredibly powerful to have that capability on parts. And one part in particular is batteries on electric bikes, linked to kind of the macro government policy on building a gigafactory, and having the ability to have a local supplier base is something that we would love. We've always tried to do that, but obviously it's not been possible on every part and every area. There's a fair amount coming in from Asia, as I mentioned. But yes, I think that's part of the whole golden age of cycling. It's a whole supply base, and building that capability in the UK, and for the UK and for export as well.
Great, thanks for that, Stephen. So Chris has just mentioned while we're answering questions from the chat function. So at the moment, I'm just picking out sort of the best questions that I see fit for Stephen. So any other sort of questions, we can get through as many as possible. But like I said, if you head over to Virtual Drinks, that may be your opportunity there to ask your question if it wasn't asked. But our next question comes from a John Percy, and he says, hi, Stephen. I listened to the Brompton Bikes Radio 4 interview this week, and very interesting to hear how strong the Brompton brand is, even in second-hand bikes. Are there plans to diversify products in building or on this powerful brand?
We're always asking that question. At the heart of it, we think our folding bike and the benefit it brings from that fold and the experience you have of riding that bike will remain at the heart of our business for the next 5 years and probably beyond. In other words, the opportunity for a brilliant folding bike that is space efficient, that's intermodal in all senses of that word, is such an opportunity for us. And we've only just started. I mean, you see Brompton has kind of made it, you know, to a reasonable scale in London, but around the cities around the world, New York, Shanghai, Singapore, Jakarta, we've just hardly started. So, you know, we believe that that core proposition, you know, is more relevant now than it ever was before. So, you know, at the heart of us, our business will remain being a folding bicycle. And obviously we're already expanding into luggage and other interrelated items, but, you know, that's going to be for the foreseeable future. That's what Brompton's going to be all about, and probably will be for a long time. And we think our business can grow, you know, to 500,000 bikes, 1 million bikes, you know, and beyond, if we get the product at the level that it needs to be, and do a good job in inspiring people to get on the bike.
Of course, definitely. Okay, so we have hit 45 minutes past 12 now, but I thought we could answer one more question, as we've had so many come through, and I've tried to be as even as possible across the board. So our last and final question comes from Jen Stephen, and she asks, how does Brompton view bike design when they have such an iconic design?
You know, we've got a great and growing team of designers downstairs, just below where I am now at the moment. You know, we're not complacent. You know, as I said, we think our bike can get better and better. Andrew Ritchie, obviously, we're sitting on an inspiring man who created the design in 1975 and built the business and did all the hard yards. But you know, and Andrew is still a shareholder in the business. You know, we still know that it can get a lot better. So we're bringing talent in from all other industries, whether it's the car industry, whether it's other forms of design, because we know that we need to improve. So we're definitely outward looking in terms of our design and looking for inspiration, not just from the bike industry and beyond. And that's something which is going to be, you know, so important to our success in the future. It will be about getting better and better, and at the heart of it will be making our bike, you know, really transforming it. We want to be the one that's always making our existing proposition redundant, you know, by getting something even better into the market, you know, around the core proposition of a folding bike, but it can improve. And I ride it most days. There's many things that annoy me about my Brompton, as much as, you know, there's 100 things that I love. But, you know, we're all kind of living the bike, so we know it can get a lot better than it is today.
Most definitely, and that's a great way to round off today's presentation. So thank you again, everybody, for attending today's presentation with Stephen. And it seems as though a lot of people were very engaged and interested in today's event, so thank you. And I apologise for any questions that weren't answered. Like I said, you can head over to Virtual Drinks today. All you have to do is type in backinbritain.com, go to the networking area, and then you can attend today's Virtual Drinks at 3 p.m, where you may have the opportunity to speak to Stephen then and get your questions answered there. So like I said, remember also the bike competition that we have going on at the minute. All you have to do is look for the golden banner in one of our stands at the exhibition to have the chance of winning a Brompton bike that Stephen was speaking about today. So thank you again for attending. It's been a great presentation, Stephen. Thank you, and I hope to see you at Virtual Drinks. See ya.